are here. Cool. So hi guys, Ashwin Soni here. Meta DD Hostel 13. जो लोग नहीं जानते हैं, I don't know how many of you are here who I know, but ठीक है. So today I will be presenting on Gita. The intent of this talk today is to basically help all of us understand that what is Gita all about? Gita है क्या? Why is it given so much of importance? Why is there so much hue and cry around Gita, especially in India? And what are the key concepts in Gita which are there, which can be classified as wisdom? So there is a lot of ambiguity when you talk about Gita. I personally had this question in my formative years. जब बहुत सारे लोग गीता को कोट करते थे, माँ बाप बोलते थे ये करो, मतलब एक बहुत फेमस चीज थी कि यार कर्म करो फल की इच्छा मत करो, जो होता है अच्छे के लिए होता है. ये सब सुन के माई चाइल्डहुड हैज हैपेंड, and somewhere down the line I also found solace in such kind of statements, or they used to give you a lot of strength, especially in the times of weaknesses, in the times of loss, at the times of failure. जब कुछ होता था तो ये लाइन जब आप याद करते थे कि यार गीता में कहा है कि जो होता है अच्छे के लिए होता है, it used to give you a lot of strength. So this was my first interaction with Gita. uh, जैसे जैसे as I grew up I developed interest towards it कि यार exactly what does it mean, and I have attempted to read Gita many times through different mediums. In the last couple of years when I have put in, I think I have started gaining things out of it, and that is when it prompted myself to go deeper into it. And I just wanted to share whatever I have learned through it with all of you. However, saying this, I want to say that कि मैं ये नहीं बोल रहा कि यार मेरे को सब कुछ आता है या फिर मैंने सब पढ़ रखा है. It's just about what I know, and I would want to share it with you. Uh, there might be many people participating over here who might have a different experience, who might have a lot more knowledge than me, who might have a lot more understanding than me in different on different concepts. But the idea over here is not to debate as to how much who knows or what who knows. Is just about sharing what has been my experience and my learning, and to summarize everything and show it to you. So basically, this is primarily what we will cover. That what is the history of Gita, why is Gita important, what was the plot of Gita, what are few of the concepts in Gita, and we'll draw a conclusion, and then probably the most interesting session would be the question answer session. So let me quickly start it, and I will target finishing everything in 30 minutes. So that we can devote a lot of time to Q&A. Great. तो मैं थोड़ा मिक्स रखूंगा इंग्लिश एंड हिंदी का. इफ एट ऑल यू गाइज फील दैट अगर काफी लोगों को सबको इंग्लिश में ही चाहिए है, तो जस्ट लेट मी नो. आई कैन switch into English. So whatever feels comfortable to you guys. So let's start with the first question. What is Gita? When we have been hearing about Gita, कि गीता में ये लिखा है, गीता में कृष्ण ने ये कहा है, Gita is considered as the Hindu Bible across the world. Gita is something which Arvind Kejriwal has been telling people to read during COVID days. So what is Gita, and what is the hue and cry about Gita? So Gita is part of Mahabharata. महाभारत तो हम सबको पता है कि कौरवों और पांडवों के बीच की लड़ाई की कहानी है. अब महाभारत कब हुई थी ये तो भाई किसी को नहीं पता. There are no evidences to it कि when महाभारत happened, but there have been certain findings कि महाभारत कब लिखी गई. So it is estimated that around 300 BC से लेके 300 AD तक, इन 600 साल के पीरियड में महाभारत was written. So actually Mahabharat was, it started with a group of books called as Bharat. Then gradually लोगों ने और लिखा उस पे, then it expanded into Jai Bharat, and eventually when people wrote more and contributed more towards it, it came to a form called as Mahabharat. So Mahabharata is basically a set of 18 books. वो 18 books में से the book number 6 is called as Bhishma Parva. In Bhishma Parva, chapter 23 and 24 is what we know as Gita today. तो गीता भी ऐसा नहीं है कि गीता is just one. There have been many Gitas, not just one. बहुत गीता है. तो गीता का बेसिक मीनिंग होता है, गीता मीन्स अ सॉन्ग. So the Gita which we refer over here is the song between Krishna and Arjun, and the proper name of it is Bhagavad Gita. There is in Mahabharata itself there is a Vyad Gita, which is also called as Butcher's Gita, in which a butcher tells a rishi called as Markandeya, और उसको गा के सुनाता है, and he tells him that being a rishi is not better than being a man who is living to serve his family like the way I am, and he proves that the butcher has more knowledge. So Gita is eventually a song, and when we say Gita colloquially, it means Bhagavad Gita, and that is the conversation between Arjun and Krishna. So Gita की setting क्या थी? Let's understand this. How did Gita occur? तो ये हुआ था कि महाभारत की लड़ाई जो है that was being fought between Pandavas and Kauravas. पांडव्स के पास 7 आर्मीज थी, कौरव्स के पास 11 आर्मीज थी, और कुरुक्षेत्र में दोनों लड़ने के लिए आए थे एक दूसरे के साथ. नाउ एट दिस पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम अर्जुन अपने रथ पे थे. अर्जुन के रथ पे हिज चैरिटियर वाज श्री कृष्ण. तो इसकी बैक स्टोरी ये है कि श्री कृष्ण के पास दुर्योधन एंड अर्जुन दोनों गए थे वॉर के पहले. दुर्योधन took the army of Arjun, army of Krishna, and Arjun took Krishna himself. So Krishna was the charioteer of Arjun. So when the war is about to start and both the armies have lined up, at this point of time, Arjun says that Krishna, take me to the center of the field. I want to see that who are we fighting with. And then Krishna goes to the center of field. Arjun उसको Krishna रथ को वहां ले जाते हैं और अर्जुन देखता है सारे लोग को. And then Arjun says that Krishna, I have a dilemma, and this is what we are going to discuss here. He says that कि यार सामने जो लोग खड़े हैं ये सारे मेरे relatives हैं. These are my closed ones, people who I love, people who I have grown with. What am I doing today? We are today here gathered to fight a war, and we want to kill our own relatives. I mean, how can this be right? I can agree that these people are filled with greed, and perhaps they cannot see what is right and what is wrong, but I can see that. And if I do see it, then why should I fight? Why should I kill them? And Arjun becomes so distraught that he keeps his bow and arrow aside and just sits down, saying that, "Ho gaya, I will not fight." This is the point where Krishna comes to him and says that you have to fight. And the first few things what Krishna tells him is in a kind of a taunting tone. So there is a verse in Gita. So by the way, there are 700 verses in Gita, and there are 18 chapters in Gita. So these 18 chapters are about the conversation which is about to happen between Krishna and Arjun, and the conversation starts in a very very practical way. जैसे दो दोस्तों के बीच अगर कुछ इशू होता है तो हम क्या बोलते हैं, अरे मतलब पागल है क्या कर रहे हैं. तो कृष्ण भी अर्जुन को ये बोलते हैं कि यार नपुंसक की तरह एक्ट मत करो, उठो और लड़ो. And then Krishna responds that no man, matlab, I'm not going to fight. And that is when Krishna realizes that Arjun has a deep conflict, and he has to resolve Arjun's dilemma for him to fight. So the entire conversation of Gita is divided into 700 verses, which are spread across 18 chapters. And amongst these 18 chapters, Krishna is telling Arjun why he should fight, why he should stand up, pick up his bow and arrow, and kill his own relatives today. This is what Gita is all about. And in this, तो ऐसा बोला जाता है कि Gita, the conversation of Gita was basically for 90 minutes. But they have basically expanded into such a long book because there are so many interpretations to it. But we should realize that the situation is very intense. Two armies are about to fight with each other. There is a war going to happen, and in between of the field, these two people are standing and they are talking to each other. Before we go deeper, I wanted to emphasize on this fact that Gita is a dialogue. Uh, it is a dialogue not because it's a dialogue between Arjun and Krishna, but Gita itself is a dialogue because it's part of Mahabharat, which itself is a dialogue, and I'll tell why. So, in one of the verses in Gita, Krishna has described human body as Navdwarapura, a city with 9 gates. When a dialogue happens, it happens between two humans. So when you say see one human, there are 9 gates in one human. So these are the 9 gates over here: 2 ears, 2 nostrils, 2 eyes, 1 mouth, one of your genitals, and one of your anus. If you combine two individuals, there are total 18 such gates. So these 18 gates are a big signifier of a dialogue happening between two people. And there are certain interesting facts. Mahabharat, the entire epic which Gita is a part of, is divided into 18 books. Mahabharat was fought between 18 armies, 11 from the side of Duryodhan, Kauravas, and 7 from the side of Pandavas. Mahabharat lasted for 18 days, and the discourse of Gita, which happens over here, is also divided into 18 chapters. So this is not just a coincidence. This is by design, and this is the underlying philosophy which is over here. That when two individuals talks, the interaction between them is a function of these 18 gates. The other thing which I want to talk about is, many recently one of my friend asked me कि hey यार कोई गीता का कोई objective version बताओ मुझे. Uh, but really sorry to say that there is no objective version of Gita. Gita by design is subjective, and I'll tell you why. Uh, so though Gita is a dialogue happening between Krishna and Arjun in Kurukshetra when two armies are about to fight, this is not what we are seeing. Gita is basically a narration given by Sanjay, who was a very close aide of Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra was the father of Pandavas, and he was the king of the entire kingdom, Kuru kingdom at that point of time. So Dhritarashtra and Pandava's father Pandu were brothers, and that's how the entire complexity starts. So Dhritarashtra अंधा होता है. धृतराष्ट्र कुछ देख नहीं सकता. He is blind by birth. So he has got a close aide, Sanjay, who has got telepathic powers. Sanjay can see things which are happening at a distance. So it's like a video conference. Sanjay को somehow Sanjay देख पा रहा है कि what is the conversation which is happening. So the first verse of Gita is when Dhritarashtra says, and this is the only line which he says in Gita, that hey Sanjay, tell me that today what is happening in the Dharma Kshetra where my sons and Pandu's sons have gathered to do what they ought to do. And then Sanjay starts explaining कि यार ये हो रहा है, ये हो रहा है. Now, the point to be noted over here is that Sanjay is seeing, Sanjay is interpreting, and Sanjay is telling those things to Dhritarashtra, and whatever he is telling verbatim, all these things are part of Gita. So nobody knows what actually Krishna said to Arjun or what Arjun asked to Krishna. Nobody knows whether, what exact words were exchanged. Whatever we are seeing over here is the interpretation of Sanjay. Krishna might have said ABCD, Sanjay might have said something else, but what we see in Gita is a mere interpretation. And the last verse of Gita, the last sentence of Gita is also, told by Sanjay, where he says that as per my opinion. So the point which is important to capture over here is that we should not fuss about the objectiveness of Gita. We should not fuss about which Gita is correct. We should not fuss about did it happen or not. The fact that the idea of Gita is out there in the world is good enough. If it is there, it is there. Well, it doesn't matter where Buddha, if Buddha existed or not. The philosophy of Buddha is there in the world. That itself means that Buddha was there. It doesn't materially matter whether he was there or not. So same is the case with Gita. So Gita is subjective. And the other thing to note over here is that Dhritarashtra is a king. He is a man with full authority, but zero sight. And he's standing with Sanjay, who is a person with full sight and zero authority. So this is again a very interesting angle to it. The next thing which is peculiar about Gita is that it's non-linear. So as I told you that Gita is divided across 18 chapters into 700 verses. By the way, Gita is written in Sanskrit. Because that was when it was penned down, that was the language of the writers back then. So there are many concepts which are repeated again and again in Gita. There are certain concepts which are not repeated, uh, but it's not that it starts with a very chronological approach that it builds up and finally has a conclusion. It's a dialogue and it just goes haywire. I mean, just like when two friends sit, we do not plan and talk about things, right? If somebody is in a trouble and when you are explaining him, you do not follow a template कि मैं इसको ये बोलूंगा फिर ये बोलूंगा और ऐसे conclude करूंगा. So Gita is just like that. It is very very non-linear. So the concepts which are there a part of Gita are also in a manner that उनको आप ऐसे decipher नहीं कर सकते कि यार ये इस stage पे आएगा वो इस stage पे आएगा. So what I've tried to do is that I have tried to handpick a few key concepts which might be of everyone's interest over here, and I just wanted to share it with you that what does Gita say about it, and how can we infer them. So the idea is that after this talk, at least all of us who are a part of this presentation would be in a position that we would be able to appreciate what Gita is and what are the key takeaways of Gita. So first thing which comes into picture is what is Bhagwan. So when we say Bhagwan, आज की डेट में हम बोलते हैं Bhagwan is God, but that's not exactly the meaning of it. See, when English has come into the equation, it has changed many things. Words have different meanings. The meanings change over time. We are talking about roughly 2000 to 2300 years since this thing was made, and meanings have changed over time. तो भगवान का मतलब गॉड नहीं होता है. भगवान का मतलब in Hindu mythology, भगवान का meaning is a person who knows everything. So basically क्या होता है कि सत्य जो होता है, what we call as truth has got different slices. You and I as humans have access to only one or few slices of truth, but Bhagavan is a person who has got access to the entire slice of truth, the entire pie of truth. So हर भाग का ज्ञान होता है, उस व्यक्ति को भगवान बोलते हैं. So simply put, a person who knows everything about reality can also be termed as भगवान. इसलिए बहुत सारे ये जो ऋषिज होते हैं, गुरुज होते हैं, at times they start calling themselves as भगवान. It's not that they are equating themselves to God. It's what the word Bhagwan itself means. So Bhagwan and God are two different things. So then what exactly is God and how do we relate to God? So for that, one of the prime takeaway of Gita was the concept of Atma and Paramatma. तो इसमें गीता में ये बताया है that within every person there resides a Atma, and besides him everything which is there is Paramatma. So if I am an Atma, then you will be called as a Paratma, but collectively every one of us would be called as Paramatma. And that is the concept which we as Hindus revere, but somehow we have totally lost the meaning of the word. So Paramatma is not an entity. Paramatma is not a person like Vishnu or Shiv. Paramatma means everything which is besides you, and that includes you as well, because you are nothing but a minuscule part of it. So equating nature is the closest thing which comes to Paramatma, and that's how Gita defines it. The other thing which Gita states is a concept of Deh and Dehi. So Deh, as we all know, is the material body which you have and which you see. Dehi is something which is called and defined as an inner resident. Now you would say, "Yaar, inner resident to Atma hai," but it's not clear in Gita. There is no clarity. There are certain verses where Krishna has equated Dehi to Atma. There are certain verses where Dehi has been equated to something else. So the conclusion which comes out of it is while Dehi is very clear that it's a physical body, Dehi is something which is a driving factor of your life. That could be Atma, that could be something else. Dehi could be emotion, Dehi could be a concept, Dehi could be a situation, Dehi could be a hormone, Dehi could be anything. But anything which is owning you at that point of time is your Dehi. And that is how Gita defines it. So to understand it, we need to, understand the concept behind, how our emotions are generated. To put it very simply, you have a mind. In your mind, you have some kind of, fixed constructs which act as filters of your thoughts. So whatever thoughts occur in your mind, which are an action of, situations happening outside, thoughts occur in your mind. They pass through these filters, which are concepts, and concepts result into emotions. So that is why often there are times when, when we feel very happy, we have a concept of what happiness means for us, and we are very, very clear about it. There are times when we feel sad because we have a concept ingrained in our mind what sadness is for us. But often there are times when you must have realized that we are full of fear. We don't understand. There is a lot of confusion. And each of us must have experienced that confusion and fear come hand in hand. पता नहीं रहता क्या करना है, डर लगता है. तो उसका रीजन यही होता है that when there is no clear concept existing in your mind, that is when there would be confusion. And whenever there is confusion, the resulting emotion in your mind would be fear, because that is how we are evolved. If you look ourselves from an evolutionary perspective, we have evolved from animals. As animals, there was uncertainty of life. The life expectancy itself was very low. And whenever there was confusion, fear as an emotion was a very, very natural outcome which could have happened to your mind. And because of fear, you would have, saved yourself. मतलब हम लोग अगर जंगल पे घूम रहे हैं, if we are monkeys and if a tiger is in front of us, we cannot think about शायरी over there. I mean, fear आएगा आपके दिमाग में and you will climb the tree. That's how you'll save yourself. But those times are past. But mind has not changed. So confusion is a genesis of fear, and that is something which we all should realize. So that is how concepts and emotions are related. So the other concept which Gita tells us about is Shruti, Darshan, and Smriti. So Shruti, the word Shruti itself means listening. इसका मतलब ये होता है कि आपसे कोई कुछ बोल रहा है तो आप श्रुत अपने कानों से सुन रहे हो. So let's say that whatever is Shruti is Gyan, which is given to us, right? And whatever we see through our eyes is Darshan. So there are two things to it. There are literal meanings to these words, and these words are also used as metaphors. So when you look at metaphorically, darshan means that are you really able to see? For example, we can see that this person is a hero, this person is a villain, this person is a different character. But real darshan means that really seeing the fears behind that individual, that why heroes are heroes, why villains are villains, why people are the way they are, because fear is the underlying emotion which is driving you. Third thing is smriti. So smriti is also equal to memories. You can also say smriti as vigyan. So when you get gyan through your ears, and you do darshan, the thing which remains in your mind are memories, and memories are basically a residual gyan, which is vigyan. So that is how Gita defines that we as human beings process things. Now, coming to the concept dharma. Sorry guys, I'm going really non-linear here because there is no way for me to condense this. Already I have taken too much time, so please bear with me. So dharma. धर्मा को धर्म बोलते हैं. धर्म गीता का पहला वर्ड है. द फर्स्ट वर्ड ऑफ गीता इज धर्म. व्हेन धृतराष्ट्र सेज कि धर्म क्षेत्र में मेरे बच्चे और पांडु के बच्चे क्या कर रहे हैं, धर्म इज द फर्स्ट वर्ड व्हिच कम्स ओवर हियर. तो धर्मा का मीनिंग, और धर्मा अगेन वो एंग्लिसाइज हो गया, धर्मा हो गया, अदरवाइज एवरीथिंग इज धर्म, योग, कर्म. इट हैज बिकम धर्मा, कर्मा, योगा. सो पार्डन मी फॉर दैट. तो धर्म का मतलब ये होता है कि इट्स डिफाइंड डिफरेंटली इन डिफरेंट रिलीजन. In Jainism, it's called as the natural flow. in Buddhism, it's called as Dhamma in Pali, which means law of nature. When it comes to Gita, so the essence of dharma in Gita is to do your duty, to become the best of your potential, is what dharma is. And if you see that, it's again very similar to law of nature, because what nature does is that it takes resources, it does its duty, which is to grow, which is to survive, which is to exist, and it perpetually keeps on doing it. So, dharma for us human beings who are a minuscule part of this nature is again to do a duty, to exist, to live, and to live in the fullest way possible, which in a very, in a romantic way, you can say that it's to live to the best of your potential. So that's what dharma is, and that's what our dharma is as per Gita. So let's see the human brain. The entire top part of your brain, which is called as a neocortex, this itself is a very recent development when you see us from an evolutionary standpoint. Neocortex, the word neo itself means new. So this is a layer of brain which we humans have, which is which makes our brains more developed as any other species on this earth, and that is the reason why we are able to think. So when we are able to think, we are able to uh, relate to others. We are able to create complex constructs. We are able to create complex concepts in our mind, which results into different kind of emotions which we strive for. And this is plainly because of the shape and size of our brain. Uh, and one reason for this is that this results in creativity, and that is one reason that humans are the only species who can live, who can see beyond themselves. We are able to empathize with others, we are able to care for others, we are able to see us as a community, and we are able to think about every one of us together, which is not very visibly or so powerfully present in other species. So this is something which has happened evolutionary. Um right? And because of this large neocortex, we are able to help other people, and we also have the expectation of receiving help from other people. We are able to value what other people needs are alongside our needs, and that is a big differentiator from the animal behavior, which is very selfish in nature. And this is what is described as dharma. To value other people needs alongside your needs is described as dharma in Gita. And when you are being selfish is defined as adharma. So there was a thing called Matsya न्याय मतलब इसका मीनिंग होता है fish law, which you can also say as jungle law or the survival of fittest. Uh, but in reality, in the world, in nature, justice and law don't exist. The entire food chain is very instinct driven. There are no heroes, there are no villains in nature. It is just a human construct, it's just a human perception. So when we define dharma, what Krishna says is that intent is more important than action. It's not about compliance, जिसको हम रीति नीति बोलते हैं. It's not that important कि जो लिखा है वो करना important है. The intent out of which you are doing this is important. So this was one of the, relating it back to the Arjun's dilemma. Arjun said कि यार मेरे को नहीं लड़ना. So Krishna told him in one of the verse in Gita that inaction is worse than doing action. So you should not be in a situation जहाँ कुछ भी नहीं कर रहे हो, and you cannot think that your actions can result into an outcome, and you control that outcome by virtue of your actions. So that is not true, because outcome is really dependent upon so many things which are happening in this universe. You are just a minuscule part of it. So you should rise up and fight, because the intent over here is that it is a dharma yudh. It is a yudh of dharma versus adharma. What Kauravas are doing are adharma, and we are the ones who are fighting for dharma, and that is why it is more important. And the point of the matter, point of fact over here is that Duryodhan was the one who was following most of the rules, and Krishna has been the one full of guile, breaking all the rules. Still we revere Krishna as Bhagavan. Still we revere Krishna as an epitome. Still we are interested in the concept of Gita, which was narrated by Krishna, despite him being a person who broke all the rules. Because what's important over here is dharma is when your intent is correct. So, so there is one verse which I would like to narrate over here, is that it's better to do what you have been asked to do imperfectly than to do what others have been asked to do perfectly. This is something what Krishna defies, because all works have inadequacies and even fire is engulfed with smoke. So this is from chapter 18, verse 47 and 48 in Gita, which basically says that तुम्हारा जो धर्म है उसको तुमको करना चाहिए. It doesn't matter where you are able to fulfill that thing with 100% ability or not, but that is what matters. So caring for family over here is one question, which came out into the picture, and then Krishna further answers it. So moving on, here is one analogy which is very important over here. So this is a chariot of Arjun, driven by Krishna, and it has got 5 horses. So this is also a metaphor that you are like a chariot. So these 5 horses signify your 5 senses: sight, smell, sound, touch, taste. Now, if you are a chariot, then who are you? Are you the one who is driving this chariot, or are you the one who is commanding the driver? This is something which we all should think, and this is the basic concept on which Gita is based out of. So they said that कि इस रथ जो आपका पूरा शरीर है उसके स्वामी आप हो, and the one who is driving this chariot is your mind, and the actual propulsion to this entire chariot is given through your senses. So senses are equated like cows grazing in a field. Each cow has its own preference of grass, and they go in a different direction. But the charioteer, your mind, is something which is in a position to control these cows. But somebody needs to give mind that direction. If you tell the mind that you have to control these cows, then he can make cows come at one position and make them into a herd. तो बोला जाता है कि mind is like a raging bull. I mean, we all must have seen a raging bull. It's quite dangerous. जब वो दौड़ के आता है तो फट जाती है. But the moment you control your mind, it's as if the bull does not exist. So in another way to look at it is that the mind of yours is your greatest enemy, because it takes you in different directions and makes you do things and gives you different kinds of seductions and which you don't want to indulge into. But the moment you make the mind your friend, and by starting to control it, it becomes your biggest friend, because now these senses are giving you the propulsion power which can lead you to conquer any land in this world. So this is what Gita tries to say when it gives us the analogy of your body is like you are like a chariot, and there is always an option to control this entire chariot. But the only thing which is important is to realize that you are the one who is the master of this chariot, not the person who is driving it, not the horses which are running around, because it is meant to work like an organized machine with you as the master on the top. Moving on, the next very important concept of Gita is karma. तो जैसे ये फिगर में यहाँ दिख रहा है कि a guy is just clicking on these domino pieces and we can see कि ये आके इसके ऊपर गिर जाएगा, and that is how we have been accustomed to karma, where we have been seeing karma as something which tells us that this is good karma and this is bad karma. But yeah, ये good or bad जो है ना, right and wrong, this itself is very debatable, and I don't want to go deeper into that, but I would like to quote one line which is told by Krishna, which was told to Arjun, is that the outcome of your actions is not in your hand. You cannot think that you control the world, because there are so many things which come into the equation, and you are just one of the input. So just assuming that something which you are doing is right or something which you are doing is wrong is totally illogical at your end to think, because all our actions are part of a larger narrative, which is our life. We operate into different contexts. And our actions might be good in one context, but they might be, you know, bad in another context. ये COVID situation ले लो यार कि हम lockdown कर रहे हैं, where we are saying that we will save lives of, you know, millions of people. But what about those people जिनकी livelihood दिहाड़ी पे चलती थी, जो लोग daily अपना खाना अर्न करते थे? What about them? They might not even have access to food today. So would you define this action as good or bad? A very classic example to this is, you know, कि हम whenever we do something, it's like a story, but that story itself is like a backstory, you know, in a series of stories. So your actions are causing ripples, which are leading to different outcomes. But to assign them a value of good and bad is something which we cannot do. So that's karma is basically all about. I'll talk more about it in the further slides, but let's understand that we as human beings, what drives us. So this is what Gita tells us, that there are three gunas which drive us. So these three gunas are tamas, rajas, and sattva. To put it simply, tamas, you can equate it with laziness, something which doesn't, you can call it as a negative gun if you want. Rajas is something which is related with energy, like when you're feeling really, really motivated to do something early in your careers, we want to prove ourselves and make us be, you know, want to show us as the best, be recognized as the best for our efforts. That is when we are in Rajas Gun. And the third gun is Sattva. So Sattva is more like a, you know, balancing act. Think of Rajas, Tamas like gravity. Think of Rajas like buoyancy, which is taking you up, gravity is pulling you down, and think of Sattva like the ether, which is covering everything, which provides balance to your life. So there is a notion कि यार सत्व गुणा साधु लोगों से linked रहता है, तमस गुणा आलसी लोगों से linked रहता है, and rajas is really linked with people who are really working hard. This is not true. All of us are combination of all these three guns. We are in different states at different points of time, but these are the three states which define us as per Gita. So again, coming back to the concept of karma. So see, what happens is in Hindu mythology, and precisely in Mahabharata and Gita, there is a concept of rebirth. That's why I've written over here that life is not once. So what happens is, unlike the Abrahamic concept in Christianity or Islam or Judaism, they think that life is once. And the moment life is only once, it becomes limited. And when you have to ascribe value to your life, since life is only once, you would want to start achieving something so that to derive the maximum value of life. It's just like the law of economics, that time is limited and you have to make the best of it. और ये हम लोग काफी लोग सोचते हैं कि यार life is once, live it the most. These kind of things are there. But in Hindu mythology, life is not once. It's said that you go through the cycles of rebirth again and again and again. So the moment life becomes perpetual, the moment time as a commodity is available in abundance, ascribing value to your life through achievements becomes meaningless. Just imagine if you have like 1,000 years to live. So would you even try for IIT? I think I will not, because मुझे लगेगा कि I can perhaps do other things. क्योंकि बहुत सारे साल हैं, बाद में कर लूंगा. Something else I'll do. But the entire meaning of life changes the moment you realize that you don't have one lifetime. Just like when I tell you that, hey, you are going to die in 30 days, and you suddenly change. Breaking Bad is a very good example. मरने वाला था and he said कि, hey, I mean, let me just explore my life and do something good. Same thing happens when your life goes into a direction when you realize that life is infinite, it's perpetual. So उस point of time पे your achievements don't matter. What matters is wisdom. And what karma says is that whatever you are doing today is like an action which is defined as a seed. They call it karma beej. And this karma beej gives rise to a fruit of karma, which is called as karma phala. So whatever you are living today is a result of your previous actions, and you're actually living the karma phala. And by virtue of your concepts, you are trying to get set to certain kind of emotions. your gunas are driving you to do certain kind of things which are resulting into actions, karma, which is karma bija. So it's like a perpetual cycle. So it's defined in a way that whatever you do in this life, depending upon the state where you are in when you die, you continue from that point of time in a different life. I do not want to give it a coloring of good and bad, positive and negative, but when you see it from that standpoint, that there is an action and a reaction and there is perpetuality, the life goes on until you reach a point of equilibrium. That is when you don't desire anything by virtue of having all the wisdom which you have gained, and that is when you get liberated, and which is the concept of moksha. uh, we Life is a drama and we all are actors. I mean, this is again related to karma. uh, uh, the way it happens is that, ये बहुत एक आनंद मूवी थी राजेश खन्ना की. There was a famous dialogue over there. This life is like a drama and we all are the actors in it. uh, तो उसका, if you try to think about it and start seeing everyone else in this world around us as actors, we realize that all of us are trying to impose our narrative on this drama called as life. Some of us succeed to influence certain people. uh, you know some of us succeed to influence a lot of people, but nobody is able to succeed everyone. And in this quest of imposing our own narrative, we are constantly negotiating with people around us, and that is reflected in the kind of choices which we make every day. And these choices are the karma which you are doing on an everyday basis. And just like in a big drama where you are not the hero, you are not the one who is trying to decide the outcome. You don't even know what is the outcome. How can an outcome is defined? You cannot even do that. So karma is just like that. And that's how there is a concept nishkam karma which will come in later is related to it. Uh, just want to talk quickly about violence over here when we talk about good and bad. So see, violence is a function of hunger. Wherever there is hunger, there would be a quest of food, and wherever there's quest of food, there is violence, and whenever there is violence, there would be consequences. Good and bad don't come into an equation. When a tiger eats a deer, he is following his dharma because he is hungry and he has to indulge into violence. So perhaps you might not call it bad, you can call it as the dharma of the tiger, but us as human beings, jahan pe if we are satisfied just by killing one bird to fill our tummy, by the matter of fact, agriculture is also kind of violence on earth. Uh, हमको जितना चाहिए होता है हम उतना नहीं लेते. We are greedy by nature and we try to accumulate a lot, and that is when we are indulging in adharma. So this was one example where you can relate good and bad and replace it with dharma and adharma. But true non-violence is only possible if you give up hunger, which is not possible. Uh, so that is why Krishna tries to tell Arjun that, whatever you are doing today is not adharma, and it's not also not violence, because it is, a necessary action which you have to take today in order to follow your dharma. And he says that doing something is better than doing nothing. This is written in chapter 3 verse 4. And that's why it is said in Gita that Atma is a thing which is never hungry. Because whenever you will have fear of death, there would be hunger, and whenever there would be hunger, there would be violence, and there would be unpredictability in your life, which leads to fear. All these things are related, but the only thing which is never hungry is Atma, and that can only happen when you can rid your mind of fear, uh, which is basically ego. So that's how Krishna talks about the concept of Nishkam Karma, which according to me is personally my biggest takeaway from Gita. So here Krishna says that, Nishkam Karma is something which means that you do something, but do not feel yourself entitled to the fruit of your labor. In very simple terms, if you're working somewhere, expectation is getting a salary out of it, right? But as per the concept of Nishkam Karma, this is what Krishna says, that work because you feel happy to do that job. do not expect a salary in return of it. I mean, that's how I can put it really simply. But the thing which is trying to be emphasized over here is that Nishkam Karma means acting without expectation. Krishna says that you have the right to do your duty, but you are not entitled to the fruit of your labor. So never feel that you are a reason for the result and develop affinity towards inaction. तो इसका मीनिंग ये होता है कि when you dissociate yourself from the uh, fruit of your labor, when you dissociate yourself from the result of your actions, two things happen and which are very, very important. One is that when the result is positive, you don't become too happy about it, which is okay. But the other thing which happens is really important. When there is a loss, there is no sense of loss, which means there is pain, but there is no suffering. Because you anyway which are detached, right? And this is the philosophy of detachment which comes out of Gita, or and in a very simple term, jo the thing which I started with is कि कर्म किए जा फल की इच्छा ना कर, जो होता है अच्छे के लिए होता है. All these things are derived from this very philosophy. When you absolve yourself and detach yourself from the fruits of your labor, when you detach yourself from the result of your actions, you reach in a state where loss cannot perturb you at all. You are not affected by any kind of happiness from the outside, but this does not mean that you are not happy. You are in a state of anand, और वो आनंद नहीं है, वो महाआनंद है. Because nothing in this world can disturb you. And try to think about this, that when you're not expecting anything in return, would many of us do the job which we are doing today? Or we will try to do things which really make us happy, because the basic construct still remains the same. There are concepts in your head which result into certain kind of emotions which are a function of your thoughts. And what are thoughts? Thoughts are a byproduct of whatever actions you do on ground. So then you will start doing things which really, really matter to you. And you will not be afraid of doing a right thing no matter what consequence it bears, because you would have built that habit of dissociating yourself as a result. Now, this is a philosophy I think all of us need to dwell upon, and it would be a gross injustice where I go deeper into it and conclude something over here, because this is the greatest takeaway of Gita, and I would want every one of you to read more about it and arrive at a conclusion yourself. But this is what Nishkam Karma tells you: to act without expectation of any fruit. Okay, so I think it's already 10:24. I'll take 6 more minutes and close it already, otherwise I'll stress too much. Shed the ego. So when you do Nishkam Karma, this is a byproduct and the cause of it. You can only truly do Nishkam Karma when you're shedding your ego. And the reason I say is because the fear which we talked about, the fear is the most primal emotion in your head. It is the first thing which comes in when there is confusion. So whenever there is a confusion, which is a result of you thinking, hey, this is right or wrong, this is good or bad, there would be fear in your head. The moment there is fear in your head, you would not be in a position to take the right decision. So hota kya hai ki when you look at the construct of the brain, I'll go back again. This thing over here is called as amygdala. Amygdala ka function ye hota hai that this organ has a primary role of sensing your emotions. Amygdala can sense your fear in an instant. जैसे ही amygdala को समझ में आता है your mind is in fear, it hijacks your mind and it takes you into a state of flight. Your reactions really become narrow. Otherwise, you might be a very learned person and you might be thinking from your prefrontal cortex, which is here in green. But suddenly, this small part of your brain overtakes you. This is also called as reptilian brain because this is the oldest part of brain. Because fear itself is the very oldest emotion which is ingrained and which is necessary for survival. But here, fear does a very, very different job. It hijacks your mind, and in a state of confusion, you do not know what to do. And if you look at ego, what is ego? Ego is nothing but it is the crumpled layer of your mind. Uh, when you have fear of certain things, they become ingrained as concepts in your mind. These concepts are improper concepts. which lead to you to confusion. I mean, I should not call these as concepts at all. I mean, these are filters which do not have any outcome. So fear is something which takes control of your mind. You're not able to come to a resolution, and everything is associated with the identity of I. So when I say ego, I am talking about aham. That is how it's described in Gita. Aham means I. It is a imaginary self, an image of yourself in your own head. So when there is fear, there is this fear to this construct of I. कि यार मेरे साथ ऐसा हो जाएगा. When you're standing in front of a tiger, you know, you might have watched so many documentaries on Discovery and National Geographic कि make yourself big, don't run and do all that. But often क्या होता है कि पड़ जाती है and you start to run and the tiger eats you because fear has come. You're not very clear what to do. You are trying to save this I, and that's why you are bound to take this action. But when you remove the concept of I from your mind, you remove all these fears along with it. क्योंकि अगर I नहीं है तो fear क्या करेगा? मतलब, I mean, it's a very deep concept. Everyone needs to think about it. But when there is no I, fear cannot do anything. Or a different way to look at it is ego is nothing but it's a collection of all your fears. When you think about yourself, आपकी identity, जो मैंने बात की थी ना, why are heroes, why are villains, there are fundamental fears which are driving us. These fears define us. इन fears को हम अगर अपनी life से निकाल दें तो हम as an identity exist ही नहीं करेंगे. That is why it is said in Gita that when you dissolve all your fears, when you dissolve all your ego, what remains is Atma. और ये हमारे साथ होता है कि life में जब बहुत ज़्यादा confusion होता है, we try to seek answers, and the day we get answer, suddenly we feel great. There is no fear because now we have achieved conceptual clarity in our mind, and that drives us. So that is when you feel your Atma, and that is something, you know, that's one of my key takeaway from Gita, that Nishkam karma is only possible when you are able to drop your ego. Otherwise, fear would always become a hindrance and you will never be able to truly adopt it. One way of doing this is to meditate. तो कृष्णा, अर्जुन आस्क कृष्णा कि यार कैसे कर सकते हैं, मतलब आप इतना तो बोल रहे हो बट हाउ कैन आई डू दिस? तो कृष्णा सेज दैट ध्यान करना चाहिए तुमको, and dhyan is a one part of the entire practice called as yoga. But this is what Krishna says, is that when you meditate, you reach a state where there are no thoughts in your mind. When there are no thoughts in your mind means you're focusing on just one activity. That might be your breath, that might be an image, that might be anything else, different for different people. But when you are in that state, when there are no thoughts in your mind, there are also no fears in your mind. And when there is no fear in your mind, there is no concept of I. And this is when you truly are interacting with the whole self. You're truly connecting with the Paramatma, because the only thing which is stopping you to connect with the Paramatma is the ego. Ego is the only barrier because it limits yourself. You say that these are the things which I can do, these are the things which I cannot do. Ego is the only thing which is acting as the barrier. And at that point of time, for those few seconds, because there are no thoughts, there is no ego, you truly blend with the Param Atma around you. You become part of the whole. And that is why meditation has been given so much of importance in Gita. But unfortunately, in our Hindu practice, we have lost meditation by not ascribing too much of importance. And here is where Buddha came into picture, where he picked this up from Gita and said that, you know, this is important. And, you know, Buddhas were the only one, in the world who were shouting meditation at the top of their voice, because they realized what is the importance of it. And that is why it is emphasized upon in Gita. So just imagine that, you get a flavor of a state where you can shed your ego and are actually experiencing that state, which one can experience by truly being a yogi. That's why meditation is very important. And scientifically, meditation improves serotonin levels in your brain, which helps you take better decisions, which gives you a feel-good feeling, which reduces stress and anxiety, which are precursors of fear. That is why meditation is important. Quickly, few more concepts. अच्छा 10:30 हो गया, 2 मिनट और लूंगा, सॉरी. योग्या एंड सांख्या, ये गणेश जी का एक चित्र है. तो यू सी इन one of the hand of Ganesh there is a Parshu, this particular thing. and on right hand there is a thread. तो कृष्ण ने भी ये बताया था कि you know there is a concept called as Sankhya, slicing things. That in order to solve a problem, you slice things, and that's what we do in science. We slice things to their smallest part, and by slicing things into their smallest part, we know about the truth of that part. And once we know the truth of that part, then we bind everything and we know the truth about the entire thing. I mean, that's what we are doing in science. We are going deeper into things. We have discovered atoms. Now we are, discovering fundamental particles, even more fundamental in nature, which we didn't even know exist. And we are discovering a more fundamental truth about our nature, our lives, and we are using this truth into our discoveries of developing better principles of ourselves. So slicing is Sankhya and uniting everything is yoga. So when you say yoga, हमारे दिमाग में योगा जब आता है तो we think about all those asanas and Modi doing asana and world celebrating World's Yoga Day. But that yoga is this asana. Yoga actually has 8 parts. You can all go in detail about it. But 8 part में basically ये होता है कि first you do yama, which means you organize your external disciplines. You do niyam, that means you organize yourself in your mind. You do asana to organize your body. You do pranayam to control your breath. You do pratyahara to control your senses. You do dharana. Dharana means to realign your concepts so that you shun the concepts which are taking you to emotions which you don't want in your life. The next stage is dhyan, which is meditation, when you absorb yourself into a state where you have no ego and you're away from fear. And when you achieve all these things, you attain a samadhi. So see, all these things are not that Krishna is saying you to become an ascetic. Let's understand over here is that Gita is all about uh, how do you live your life. Gita is not told to you that you leave everything and go. Gita tells you to live this life, and Gita tells you how to live its life. So I would like to end this discourse by this slide uh, by highlighting a very important concept that Gita is about communication. So, these are the 2 pictures which we saw in the first slide. This is Dhritarashtra and Sanjay is telling him something, and this is Krishna who is telling Arjun. So there is one person, Krishna, who is giving knowledge, and there are 3 people who are receiving this knowledge. There is Arjun, there is Sanjay, and there is Dhritarashtra. Now, Sanjay is just a transmitter. He is seeing something and he is interpreting it and he is passing to Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra is someone who has a very different agenda, who just wants to know what is happening to his kids. He is not concerned about what Arjun is asking, what Krishna is saying. Only Arjun over here is listening to Krishna's words with the intent of inquiry, with the intent to understand, with the intent to find a solution. Now, each one of them, Arjun, Sanjay, and Dhritarashtra are listening to Gita, which is coming from the mouth of Krishna. But everyone is having a different reaction. So I want to ask a question to all of you that who are you? Are you Sanjay, who are just translating things which are coming to you, as we often do in our jobs, that somebody tells that this is to be done and we just pass this knowledge to the front line? Are you Dhritarashtra, who is not concerned at all, who is in a different zone altogether? Or are you Arjun, who really want to find a solution to a problem, who really seeks knowledge, and who is willing to listen? That's it. I'll end it here, guys. Thank you.
Awesome, yeah, Sony. Amazing.
Thanks, man. तो क्वेश्चंस एक बार मैं लिंक देख लेता हूँ. Just a minute, guys. I'm just opening the questions. Can you see my screen, by the way, or have I stopped sharing?
Nope, can't see your screen.
Okay. Okay, I'll just. Yeah, I think it's visible now. Okay. How would you utilize the concept wisdom of karma in your business context today, Akshat? So यार again, I want to make it very clear. ऐसा नहीं है कि मेरे को सब कुछ पता है. So what I will do over here is I'll share my experiences and I'll tell what I do. You can pick it up from there. And often it happens कि जब हमको कुछ डाउट होती है ना, तो अगर हमको कोई अपनी जर्नी बताए कि दैट इज हाउ आई हैव tackled this problem, we learn the best out from there, because the answers are within us. They do not come from the outside. They are within us. So here is I do the see karma. So when I talk about karma, for me karma is nishkam karma. This is something which I truly follow. This is something which I've picked up in the last 1 year. It's not that कि मेरे को हमेशा से ये था. Last 1 year में मैंने इसलिए किया क्योंकि यार I was confused, man. I had a lot of confusion in my life, and it was there for a long period of time. Childhood से ही था, but it manifested in a very real way once I entered into the job world post IIT. During last years in IIT, डड्डे ईयर में खाली बैठे रहते थे, तो उस समय भी बहुत सारे थॉट्स आते थे कि राइट क्या है, रॉन्ग क्या है. और I never had this tendency to read. So I was really in a fix where I was not talking to people. I was not discussing these things. मतलब कौन ही बैठ के डिस्कस करता है यार ये गीता वीता की बातें या फिर वेरी फंडामेंटल थिंग्स, और किसके पास आंसर होता है. तो and when you don't read as well, then there is no way of figuring out those answers, and the only thing what you can do is do a mental inquiry, which in itself is a struggle, and try to find out these answers. So after reading a lot, when I truly came to appreciate and understand, okay, जो दर्शन है ना, मैंने खुद का दर्शन किया है, and while doing darshan for myself, I realized that I am full of fears. जब मुझे ये चीज पता चल गई कि यार डर है मेरे अंदर, तो मैंने ये आइडेंटिफाई करना चालू किया कि कौन सा डर है यार. एंड आई फाउंड आउट सो मेनी फियर्स विद इन मी, एंड इनवेरिएबली सारे फियर्स चाइल्डहुड से लिंक्ड होते हैं. देयर माइट बी सम इंसिडेंट which might have happened to you in the childhood which affects you so much in your present life. And I realized that killing these fears is a function of darshan, which is diagnosis. But you cannot be in a state when you can do diagnosis for all your fears. So there has to be a better way to it. And that's when I realized the philosophy of nishkam karma. I realized that I was very afraid to put my own opinion. मेरे को ऐसा लगता था मैं assertive नहीं हूँ. और मैं assertive, how to be assertive, ये किताब पढ़ने की कोशिश करता था. But when I realized that it is a fundamental fear of not knowing, and I think this is my fear till today, I realized that this is something which is never ending यार. मुझे कितना भी नॉलेज हो मेरे को डर लगता है. इस प्रेजेंटेशन की पहले मेरी गांड फट रही थी कि यार मैं क्या बोलूंगा, समझ में नहीं आ रहा है. आई वेंट कंप्लीटली ब्लैंक, एंड दिस इज वेरी नेचुरल. सबके साथ होता है ये किसी ना किसी फॉर्म में. And that is when I realized that doing nishkam karma is one thing which can absolve me for that. And for me it means it started from letting go of my ego. मुझे समझ में आया कि यार मुझे ईगो का मतलब ही नहीं पता था. I used to think that ego is arrogance. Then I realized that ego is a mental image of yourself. It is a collection of your own fears. It is the only thing which is separating you from the potential which you can achieve. क्योंकि डर जाओगे तो यार ट्राई नहीं करोगे कभी. इस डर को कैसे हटाऊं? जब मुझे इसका सोल्यूशन मिला कि यार ईगो हटाना है, तो मैंने उसकी कॉन्शियसली कोशिश करी. एंड व्हेन आई स्टार्टेड टू अप्रिशिएट दिस कांसेप्ट ऑफ निष्काम कर्म, it changed my life. So the way I follow karma in my business context today is that I do things which I am meant to do. I solve problems in the way the problems should be solved. The challenges today are not my challenges. The problems today are not my problems. They are just problems. And I am an independent observer. So when it is not mine, there is nothing to fear. And when there is nothing to fear, you are at your creative best. And you come up with solutions which are actually fitting into it. To the extent you also know that whether you are the right person to solve this or not. So I apply this. तो उससे दो फायदे होते हैं कि I have seen the change in myself where my approach to solving problems have become better, and at the same time I'm not afraid to take any decision which might be unpopular, which might counter someone else's argument. I take criticism in a very, very neutral way, because it's just information to me. I'm not afraid of judgment anywhere, and that has massively changed my approach towards work. So when you say कि यार business context में क्या करते हो, यार हमारी life दिन के 24 घंटे होते हैं, I think 12 घंटे तो हम काम में ही लगे रहते हैं, and most of the times we think about work. Work is actually a life today. So I would say that Nishkam Karma is something which you apply in your life, and that's how I have done it. Dropping my ego and trying to do things without attachment is something which I try to do. And I say try because there are so many occasions where I find myself at square one and I have to, come back into this state. This is just like meditation. When you are being in a state of no thought and suddenly you see yourself कि यार you are indulging into a thought और आप thought में बह चुके हो, पता नहीं कहीं लंदन पहुंच गए हो अपनी imagination में, and you bring yourself back to the state of no thought. Your life is very, very similar to this particular situation where you think that you are not indulging, you are into your ego, you are killing it, you are indulging to Nishkam Karma, and suddenly you realize that you start become greedy, you start fearing, and that is when you have to realize this, which is a function of self-awareness, and bring you back into the situation, into the commanding situation where this concept of dropping your ego and the concept of Nishkam Karma actually drives your life and drives your decision. So this is how I do it. What is the difference between dharma and karma? Dharma and karma. Okay. यार तो आप मेरा डेफिनेशन सुनना चाहते हो कि गीता क्या बोलती है? देखो गीता ये बोलती है कि धर्म इज समथिंग विच इज द लॉ ऑफ नेचर. सो धर्म फॉर यू इज नेचुरल. Karma is something which is a derivation of your dharma. So let me say karma is f of dharma. ठीक है, आपका जो धर्मा होगा that will dictate what kind of things you do. So I will take an example over here that you are married, right? You have a wife, you might be having kids, you might have a family, mother, father. So तुम्हारा धर्म क्या है? Naturally, what do you want? Naturally, you would want to live in harmony. Naturally, you would want to keep these people happy, provide for them, help them when times are bad. This is what naturally you will do, right? So this is your dharma from this lens. Then what is your karma? Your karma is whatever lets you fulfill your dharma over here. So your karma would be to be a good husband. Your karma would be to say sorry if you have had a big fight with your wife, because ultimately if your goal is happiness and you appreciate being with her, then you should try to mend those things. Your karma would be to provide for your family. You cannot sit on your couch whole day smoking a joint and doing nothing, because in that way, if you are not inherently rich, you cannot afford to live a healthy life. Money is also required to function. So that is your karma. Keeping them happy is your karma. Keeping them protected is a karma. आज कोविड की सिचुएशन में you would not want my father is there, he's 67 and he's a heart patient, a prime candidate for COVID. I fear for him a lot because I cannot do anything. Confusion है मेरे दिमाग में. But if I would have been with him, my karma would have been to not let him go outside and go outside myself to do sabji shopping, because that will reduce the probability of him catching the COVID. So that's how, let's say dharma is the principles and karma is the charter of your actions. So yeah. Follow-up questions. Would it not contradict with the concept of doing karma without worrying about the results? Okay.
Hi, sorry, Nitin here. So just wanted to add, I think what you're saying is कि हमें कर्म करना चाहिए, and that is a function of your dharma, because that is something like कि कर्म करना चाहिए to achieve whatever your dharma is. So again, to achieve something